Hello, listener to the Nomich and Supertendoboy podcast. As you're probably aware, the podcast is ending, but don't fret, for it will be replaced with another podcast. Unfortunately, that means that this podcast will be coming to an end on all audio platforms such as iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, and so on. If those are your primary listening platforms, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you can't listen to it anymore. If there are some episodes that you haven't listened to, you can find all of them on the Nomich channel, link in the show notes of this episode. They will remain there for as long as YouTube exists, and you can come back to them whenever you'd like. However, new episodes will not be coming out of this podcast, Nomich and Supertendoboy podcast, and they will not be available on iTunes, Google Play, etc. The new podcast that we are creating is going to be called Segmented. The reason it is called this is because, plainly, each episode is segmented into different segments, including but not limited to your favorites, such as 60-second improv stories, current news in a random country, word of the day, short story discussions, games such as the association game that we played once, questions only if we have guests, and more, of course. We're open to suggestions. In addition to these segments that we all know and love from the Nomich and Supertendoboy podcast, we will also have new ones, such as Blankology, where we both find and discuss an ology. If that doesn't make sense, wait for the podcast, it'll be very fun. Things that are less likely to happen than getting struck by lightning. Things we hate about the things we love. Anti-ASMR, and one interesting fact about ourselves. Even though we will be having a slightly different format than this podcast, it will still contain us, our personalities, and that's probably the reason you've listened anyway. So, if that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, just wait around for the first episode, listen to it. If you don't like that, or the format, or you just don't like us anymore for some reason, don't listen. But I urge you to try this out, because it will be very similar to this podcast. So, if you want to give it a listen, unfortunately I cannot link you directly to it, for it is not set up yet. However, in the description of this YouTube video will house all the necessary links you will need in order to find the segmented podcast, i.e. iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, and the RSS feed. At first, the YouTube video will not have all the necessary links, seeing as it will not actually be up anywhere. However, if you come back to this video later, it will have all the necessary links that you will need. The reason I am doing it this way is because this episode, after September 30th, this will no longer be available on Google Play, iTunes, the RSS feed, or Libsyn. It will only be available on YouTube. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to all the listeners of the podcast, especially our one patron on Patreon, Malcolm Spencer. I would also like to say join us for this adventure. It will be very fun. And finally, from both Tendo and I, thank you for listening.